Hi, I'm Mira. Welcome to another story. Let's see where this one takes us. The city pulsed with light and noise, a living organism made of glass, steel, and neon. It was alive in the way that only artificial things could be. Bright and suffocating, dazzling and hollow. Iris walked through its crowded streets with her head down, her shoulders hunched against the weight of it all. Billboards flickered overhead, touting the wonders of memory shards. The latest advertisement boomed. Relive your best moments, or create the ones you've always wanted. She clenched her fists, ignoring the glossy smiles of the people on the screens. She didn't need memories that weren't hers. What she needed was to make something real, something that couldn't be bought and sold. But no matter how many hours she spent hunched over her keyboard, every note she wrote felt stale, lifeless. Like her music was just another product in a city that churned out fakes. Her apartment was as uninspiring as the streets outside. A cramped studio filled with mismatched furniture, peeling wallpaper, and the ever-present hum of the city beyond her window. Her keyboard sat on a rickety stand in the corner, surrounded by crumpled sheets of paper covered in half-written melodies. She dropped her bag on the floor and sank into the chair by her desk. The weight of her failure pressed down on her. Another day with no inspiration. Another day of nothing. A sharp knock at the door made her jump. Frowning, she stood and crossed the room, peering through the peephole. A man in a long coat stood on the other side, his angular face shadowed by the dim hallway light. "Miss Iris," he called, his voice smooth. "I have something for you." Her first instinct was to tell him to go away, but something about his tone stopped her. Against her better judgment, she opened the door a crack. "Who are you?" "Elias," he said, flashing a quick smile. "I hear you're a musician." She narrowed her eyes. "What's it to you?" "Let's just say I have an interest in people like you." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small crystalline shard. It shimmered faintly, the patterns inside shifting like liquid fire. "This is called Requiem. It's a memory shard, but not the kind you'd find at the exchange. This one's unique." "What's in it?" she asked, unable to tear her eyes away from the shard. "The final moments of a composer," Elias said, his voice softening. His last work, unfinished but brilliant. He put everything into it, and now it's waiting for someone who can bring it to life. Iris's breath caught. "Why me?" "Because you have the talent," Elias said simply. "And because you're desperate enough to use it." Her jaw tightened. "How much?" Elias smiled faintly and shook his head. "Consider it a gift, or maybe a test. Either way, it's yours now." He placed the shard on her desk and stepped back. "Good luck, Iris." Before she could respond, he turned and disappeared down the hallway. Hours later, she sat in the dim light of her apartment, staring at the shard. Its glow cast faint patterns on the walls, dancing like firelight. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the interface on her desk. Was she really about to do this? To let someone else's memories invade her mind? Her fingers trembled as she slotted the shard into the interface. The machine hummed to life, and her world exploded. Music. Brilliant, haunting, fractured music poured into her mind, filling every corner of her consciousness. It wasn't just sound, it was emotion, raw and overwhelming. She saw flashes of the composer's life, his hands trembling over a piano, his feverish scribbles on sheet music, the despair etched into his face as he realized he wouldn't live to finish his masterpiece. Iris gasped, clutching the edge of her desk. The music surged, demanding to be completed. Her hands moved to the keyboard almost instinctively, the notes spilling out in a flurry of sound. She didn't just hear the Requiem, she felt it. It was pain and beauty, defiance and surrender, all wrapped into one. But as the final note echoed through her apartment, a faint red light blinked on the shard interface. She froze, her breath hitching. Somewhere in the city a signal had been sent, and the memory exchange was already on its way. The pounding at the door started before dawn. Iris jolted awake, her head still foggy from the music that had surged through her mind the night before. For a moment she thought it was part of a dream, a fragment of the Requiem still clawing at her consciousness. But when the pounding came again, louder this time, she scrambled to her feet. Iris, a cold, mechanical voice called out, "You are in possession of unauthorized memory data. Open the door and comply, or force will be used." Her stomach dropped. The memory exchange had found her. She backed away from the door, her mind racing. The shard sat on her desk, its faint glow a silent accusation. They'll take it, she thought. They'll take it, and I'll never finish it. Before she could act, the door rattled violently, and the sharp crack of a battering ram echoed through the small apartment. She snatched the shard, shoving it into her jacket pocket, and bolted for the window. The metal frame groaned as she shoved it open, the icy wind biting at her face. The door splintered behind her as she climbed onto the fire escape. She didn't look back. She descended as fast as she could, her boots slipping on the frost-covered metal. Shouts erupted from above, followed by the heavy thud of footsteps in pursuit. The alley below was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of a flickering neon sign. Iris ran without thinking, weaving through the narrow streets and shadowed passageways. Her breath fogged in the cold air, each step pounding in rhythm with her racing heart. The city seemed to close in around her, its towering buildings like sentinels watching her flight. She turned a corner sharply and nearly collided with a man standing in the shadows. "Elias!" she gasped, her voice a mixture of relief and anger. "What the hell is happening?" "You activated it, didn't you?" Elias said, his tone calm but his eyes sharp. "I told you it would attract attention. You didn't tell me they'd kick down my door," she snapped. He grabbed her arm, pulling her deeper into the shadows. "There's no time to argue. They won't stop until they have that shard. And you." "Why? It's just music," she protested. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't true. The Requiem wasn't just music. It was something more, something powerful enough to send the exchange after her. Elias glanced over his shoulder, his expression grim. "It's never just music. The Requiem isn't just a melody, it's memory. Pure, unaltered, unregulated memory. If you finish it, you'll set loose something they've spent decades trying to control." "What does that even mean?" she demanded. Elias leaned in closer, his voice low. "The Requiem is a key, a blueprint. It doesn't just unlock the composer's music, it unlocks the memories of everyone connected to the exchange. Everything they've taken, everything they've buried, it comes flooding back." Iris stared at him, the weight of his words settling over her like a heavy cloak. "And they'll kill me to stop that." "Exactly," Elias said. "So you have a choice. Run, hide, and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, or finish the Requiem and make it mean something." The sound of boots echoed in the distance, drawing closer. Elias grabbed her hand and pulled her into a crumbling building. The walls were covered in graffiti, the floors littered with broken glass and scraps of metal. He led her down a narrow staircase into a dark, cavernous room where a keyboard and a tangle of wires sat waiting. "You planned this," Iris said, her voice accusing. "I planned for this," Elias corrected. "They'll find us soon. If you're going to play, it has to be now." Iris stared at the keyboard, her hands trembling. The shard in her pocket seemed to hum, its glow faintly visible through the fabric. The music surged in her mind again, fragmented and demanding, like a fire begging for fuel. "I don't even know if I can finish it," she said quietly. "What if I fail?" Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to be perfect, Iris. You just have to play." The pounding of boots echoed above them. Iris took a deep breath and pulled the shard from her pocket, slotting it into the interface. The machine hummed to life, and the room filled with a faint, resonant melody. Her hands found the keys almost instinctively. The first notes were hesitant, uncertain, but they grew stronger as the music took hold. The fragments began to weave together, forming something larger, something whole. It wasn't just the composer's Requiem anymore, it was hers, too. The sound of the music drowned out the approaching footsteps. For the first time, Iris didn't care about the agents breaking down the door. She didn't care about the risk. All she cared about was the music, the truth it carried, and the people it could reach. And then the door above shattered. The door burst open with a deafening crash, and Iris's heart skipped a beat. Heavy boots thudded against the floors above as the agents poured into the building, their shouts echoing down the stairwell. The music faltered under her trembling hands, a discordant note breaking through the melody. "Keep playing!" Elias shouted, positioning himself between her and the staircase. His weapon was drawn, his jaw tight with focus. "They can't stop you if you finish it!" Iris swallowed hard, her fingers hovering over the keys. The shard's glow pulsed in rhythm with the music, urging her forward. Her hands began to move again, slowly at first, then faster as the melody surged back to life. The Requiem wasn't just a song, it was a story. Every note carried the weight of a life lived, of memories stolen and hidden away. The agents stormed down the stairs, their weapons raised. The first shot rang out, a sharp crack that reverberated through the cavernous room. Elias ducked behind a pillar, returning fire with calculated precision. "I can't do this," Iris cried, her voice trembling. The music swirled chaotically in her mind, fragments slipping through her grasp. "It's too much!" "Yes, you can!" Elias shouted, reloading. "This isn't just about you, it's about everyone they've silenced. Play, Iris!" The urgency in his voice cut through her fear. She closed her eyes, shutting out the chaos around her. The music came into focus, the pieces falling into place. Her hands moved instinctively, weaving the fragments into a melody that was both haunting and defiant. The agents advanced, their movements mechanical and relentless. One broke away from the group, heading straight for Iris. Elias stepped into his path, his shots precise but desperate. He took the agent down, but not without a price. A sharp cry escaped his lips as he staggered back, clutching his side. "Keep playing!" he gasped, blood seeping between his fingers. Iris's heart clenched, but she didn't stop. The shard glowed brighter, the music building to a crescendo. The room itself seemed to vibrate with the force of it, the air heavy with sound. The agents faltered, their steps slowing. One by one they dropped their weapons, clutching their heads as the music overwhelmed them. The Requiem was no longer just sound, it was light, emotion, memory. It poured from the shard, flooding the room and spilling out into the city beyond. Iris felt its power surge through her, a torrent of stolen moments returning to their rightful owners. Above, the city paused. People stopped in the streets, their eyes wide as fragments of lost memories filled their minds. A mother fell to her knees, weeping as she remembered the laughter of a child hailed him from her. A worker stared at his hands, trembling as the joy of a long-forgotten love resurfaced. The city's hum of machinery and commerce gave way to silence, broken only by the faint echoes of the Requiem. The agents in the room collapsed, their bodies slack as the music unraveled the control that had been placed over them. Elias slid to the floor, leaning against the wall as his breathing slowed. "You did it," he murmured, his voice weak but laced with awe. "They can't take it back now." Iris struck the final chord, the sound reverberating like the toll of a great bell. The shard's glow dimmed, its energy spent, but the melody lingered in the air, a memory that could never be erased. She turned to Elias, tears streaming down her face. "Is it over?" He managed a faint smile. "For us? Maybe? For them?" He nodded toward the unconscious agents. "This is just the beginning." The aftermath was quiet, almost surreal. The shard lay cold and lifeless on the keyboard, its purpose fulfilled. Iris sat beside Elias, tearing a strip of fabric from her jacket to press against his wound. The city outside was still, as if holding its breath. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias chuckled weakly. "Now we see what they do with their memories. Some will fight, some will run, but no one will forget. Not anymore." Iris looked at her hands, still trembling from the intensity of the performance. She had spent her life chasing brilliance, desperate to leave her mark on the world. And now she had. But it wasn't just hers, it belonged to everyone who had been silenced, everyone who had been forgotten. She stood and walked to the doorway, looking out at the city. The neon light seemed dimmer now, less oppressive. For the first time, she felt like the city wasn't looming over her, but waiting for her. Behind her, Elias coughed, his voice a faint rasp. "You're not done, you know. They'll come back. They'll try to take control again." "I know," Iris said, her voice steady, "but I'll be ready." And for the first time, she truly believed it. Thanks for listening. If the story stuck with you, come back next time for another journey.